on my birthday. That was humiliating. Mostly because I've never laid a finger on her, I've never threatened any of them, I've never made her be afraid of me or the kids or any of that, but she had to attest that I've done all of those things on this piece of paper. So I did what any good addict would do, and I went and got high over that. Now, when they released me from rehab, they court-ordered me into Rebos, which is a halfway house in Memphis, sober spelled backwards. And one of the biggest rules in a sober living house is you can't get high. And I did that. And so I knew I was about to go back to jail, so right back to South Memphis I went. I just went on the run. And then I actually had a conversation with Erin that her attorney did that without her knowledge or something. I don't remember what it was. And I started realizing like how bad I fucked up by going on the run, getting high again. I went and turned myself in. And sure enough, I mean, obviously I went to jail, but the drug court judge he didn't give me another chance. Like, he sees this a lot. He expected it, blah, blah, blah. I was banned from that halfway house. And they were like, we're just going to leave you in jail until we figure out what to do with you. You can't go home. You can't go back to the halfway house. And we don't know what to do with you. And so I spent my birthday, or not my birthday, I spent Thanksgiving in jail. They kept me. God, they probably kept me a month that time with no bond. Like, there's no hope of getting out. You get out when the judge says you can get out. And I pissed the judge off at this point because he took a chance on me. Even though he expected it to happen, he's mad. They finally let me out December 17th, and I'll never forget this. That day in court, because the jail backs up to the courthouse. It's literally like underneath the court, kind of. So they took me into the courtroom from jail. And this guy named Brian Owens comes up to me and asks me, he's like, you tired of living like this, dude? I was like, yeah, I'm really tired of living like this. And he looked me in the eye for a minute. He's like, you don't have to. And I don't know why that simple yet incredibly profound statement hit me like a ton of bricks, dude. Like, I started bawling like in the middle of court. Like, it was weird, it just hit me. So, because I could tell by the way he said it, this guy that I'm just down meeting for the first time, in the way he said that, I could tell he's been where I was. He literally was where I was. And come to find out later, he had been standing on the other side of that wall years ago as a client in drug court, and today he works for that court. But I could tell this guy knew something. He knew a way out of this, And he told me that he was going to get me out of jail that day. And then he wanted me to meet him at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting that night. Now, I'd been to NA back in California, but I just used it as a place to pick up chicks. Like, I didn't pay any attention. But I would do whatever I had to do to get Brian to get me out of jail. And I would do whatever I had to do to not live that way. And I meant it, like, with every fiber of my being. I meant that shit. I was dead set on, I'm going to do this. And so he got me out of jail. I found out after I left the jail that day that the judge was dead serious when he said I can't go home and I can't go to the halfway house. But they forgot to figure out what to do with me, so I had to figure that out. Which I'm sure was 100% intentional, right? They wanted to see what I was going to do. So now I'm a free man, and it's middle of December, right before Christmas, and I have nowhere to go. I'm on the streets. Am I going to fuck up or am I going to do right? And I think that's what they were trying to figure out. And I did right. I got with my dad, got into an extended stay motel. I went to an NA meeting. First time I ever saw her. I was curious about doing it. And I decided I wanted to try to fix things with Erin. She's the mother of 5 of my kids, and divorcing her was something I could not wrap my mind around. No matter how bad she wanted it, she spent all those years thinking I was the one for her, knowing the problems that I had. Here we are with the problems front and center. What are we going to do? I had that conversation with her. We decided to reconcile. And so I think it was Christmas Eve of 2014, I moved back into the house with her and the kids. Which in hindsight, it's a terrible idea.
Did you blame her for the restraining order? You upset about that?
I was upset about it. I was hurt more than anything. I didn't blame her for the relapse. I will never blame anybody else for that. Yeah, I make my own decisions. And when I choose to get high about something, that's on me, not them. When we went to court for the restraining order, because the way they do these things, they'll issue it just based on the word of the woman. And that's good. I'm glad they do that. And then you have a hearing about it to decide if it's going to stand or get tossed out. And when we sat down in the courtroom, they start asking Erin all these questions like, when did Mr. Owen strike you, or when did he do this? And she's like, no, none of that ever happened. And the judge is basically, well, then you can't have a restraining order. What are we doing? And so it just got to like, when I was afraid, I was going to lie and say I had, put my hands on her or something, which nothing like that ever happened in that marriage.
Were you sharing needles?
No. Never, not once. In fact, this is one of the reasons I was able to hide it so well. I was the worst person I knew. I didn't have friends.
Do you think you put your family in danger?
Yeah, I definitely put them in danger. No doubt about that.
So, did you blame her?
I don't. Yeah, I don't blame her at all. In fact, hindsight being 2020, I wish she hadn't let me move back in. I had no business being around my kids right then at all, or her. Yeah, I didn't deserve to be sleeping in that house that we had worked to pay for together. Yeah, 1,000 things could have gone wrong.
What's our move?
Something must have went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't handle guilt well. Never have. I drink that guilt. I always have. And I don't think things were meant to work out between me and her. Too much damage has been done. It was a terrifying thing to try to accept that, because you start trying to think, how am I going to raise my family with her, With the exception of this 10-month period, all things considered, I've been a pretty stellar dad. Outside looking in. You know that that's not true because you've heard all the fucked up stuff that I was doing, but I was still telling myself a lie that I wanted the world to see. And I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to raise these kids in a broken home now? What's going to happen with my cases? I was looking at a lot of prison time if I fucked up drug court.
No matter where you're watching Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.
And so I just pull out my knife and I just...
Is that as bad as it got?
I didn't even have the rest of the gun with it. He would just take the over, like, I'm going to kill some cops.
You stabbed him?
Turns out that when you drink with Vivitrol, it makes you extremely violent.
Wow.
He's literally like blackout drunk, out of his mind.
Is that as bad as it got?
No. I think for James, that's as bad as it got. I think that kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and I somewhat got kidnapped away from Ben and away from James. We had another guy that fronted us, and I had promised him my wedding ring, and so he ended up taking me, and he wouldn't let me out of his sight until we were like going to get it appraised, and so after that happened, I was like, okay, I've been technically kidnapped like twice now. Maybe it's time to slow it down. And you don't really have that choice. When you're on crack, you don't get to make that. Like it consumes every bit of you. It just takes you. And I think the only way to get out of it is to like sufficiently suffer enough to go through so much shit that you're like, you know what, I would just seriously rather die than to live like this anymore. And at one point, I had lost Ben. Like, we were living in a $700 truck with stolen plates at this point, and Brandon Kelly, his best friend that would later overdose, was kind of living in the truck with us. And I don't remember where Ben went. I think we dropped him off at a hotel to go score some dope for us. He stole my phone, and I couldn't find him. Like, he wasn't at the hotel anymore. I couldn't call him because I realized he had stolen my phone. And we seriously had just lost each other for like 3 or 4 days. I had no idea where he was. I just rolled around in the Tahoe looking for him. And I think that was one of the things. Like, we had gone through this much shit together. And now we're in the same area, running around with the same people doing the same drugs, and we couldn't find each other. And as much as I was angry at him for stealing my phone and doing all the shit that we had done to each other in that addiction, I knew that I still loved this man, and I needed to find him, and I didn't want to lose him. And I think the thought of losing him, or knowing that he could be dead in an alley somewhere, and I had no idea, I think that was part of what got me to my end of being ready to quit. And then you hear Ben's version, and he wakes up just covered in blood, have no idea where it came from. So that part, and then Ben's part, and we just like, you know what, we're gonna die if we don't leave. We're gonna die, our kids are gonna die, it's time to go.
Was there infidelity in here too?
Not on my end. I've never been unfaithful ever.
On Ben's end?
Just with those 3 that we talked about earlier.
Not during this.
Well, because all we hung around were prostitutes. And even though he was cheating, Ben treasures his penis, so he wasn't going around prostitutes.
Will we miss him?
I mean, there's a whole lot. I didn't know how long I was going to be sitting here, so I was just kind of dumping around. There's, like, Ben went in a very nice order, and I was just kind of all over the place. There's, I mean, a whole hell of a lot missing. I did. I stabbed him. I mean, there's a lot that's missing.
You stabbed him?
Mm-hmm. It was more of a splash. That he, one of the times that he tried to get sober, he got really, really bad drinking. This is when we were in our big, nice house, and we were just limited money. And he just started drinking again, and got so bad that he would take the upper of his gun, and didn't even have the rest of the gun with it. He would just take the upper, like, I'm going to kill some cops. And he would, like, literally run out the front door thinking he was going to go kill cops. Like, that's how out of his mind he was. And it got so bad like that I was like, dude, we gotta do something. Like, it's going to get really fucking bad. And remember, like, I grew up with an extremely violent alcoholic for a mother. So that's what, you know, I'm used to getting beat shitless. So, like, he's never been violent with me, but I'm just seeing this progression. And I just know that at some point, he's going to start beating the shit out of me like my mom used to. So I'm getting really fucking scared. I'm like, dude, you've got to do something, because I can't. Once you start hitting me, I've got to go. And I don't want to leave him, and I know that. So she's like, cool, it's fine. I will take a shot. There's a shot called Vivitrol. And it makes it to where, like, you don't want alcohol, or if you do drink alcohol, it's supposed to make you sick or something like that. So he starts doing that shot, and at first he does okay. First maybe a week or 2. Well, then he starts drinking. He starts drinking with it. Turns out that when you drink with Vivitrol, it makes you extremely violent. And he got really, really angry. I don't even remember what it was about. And I remember we were arguing over something, and he gets in my face, and it's almost like PTSD from when me and my mom used to be, and I just reacted. I think I just pushed him or something. I was just trying to get him out of my face and away from me, so I didn't want to get beat. And he took that as an act of aggression, and he took my head and, like, like with his, he's got a big hands, dude. So he took my whole head and bashed it into the wall. And like, I saw black, like for a split second. I think any harder and I would have, like, he would have made me black out. Luckily I didn't. Luckily it was like a half second of blackness. And I, you know, I was like, oh fuck. He could have just really fucked me up. And I'm always carrying a blade, always. Since I was like 14, I've carried knives on me. And so I just pull out my knife and I just slash the shit out of his arm, like right here. And that was it. Like, gloves were off at this point. He was like, oh, fuck no, bitch. And he just starts, you know, pushes. It was such a blur that I can't tell you exactly everything that happened, but I do know that we were at each other's throats. He was trying to hit me. I was trying to hit him. There's a knife involved. There's blood everywhere. And we make it into the bedroom. And I think at this point, like, he's, you know, I'm a girl. He's a guy. He's a lot stronger than me. And I know this. And so I'm trying to get the fuck away from him because he's literally like blackout drunk, out of his mind. He's not Ben anymore. And so I'm trying to run from him because I just realized I just slashed this motherfucker. He's going to kill me. So I run into the bedroom and I try to close the door. Of course, he kicks it open and gets on top of me and starts choking me. So much so that I'm starting to black out. Like, I'm starting to lose consciousness. And Thomas and his girlfriend Jackie were like in a truck in the garage or in the driveway this whole time. Like, he was supposed to be coming in to get his belongings or something. Like, Thomas, he decided to move back to Thomas's house for a while because we had gotten into it because he was drunk. So they were sitting outside waiting on him to come back out. He was supposed to just be coming in to get his items. So I kind of come to because I was barely even conscious at this point, and Thomas is ripping him away from me and pulling him off me because he's, I mean, just hands around my neck. I'm gonna fucking kill you, bitch. And just like, it was very bad. It was a very traumatic experience. But I do believe had Thomas not peeled him off of me, I would not be here right now.
They said this was our share from
I would be. I almost lost consciousness. So there's not a lot of stories like that. That was the most violent one between us. There were a couple of knife fights over heroin, just because I always have a knife and I always pull out a knife. So that's on me. But there's a lot of bad that happened.
Wow. No matter where you're watching Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on...
Buddy, what is the origin story of Tim Dillon? Tell me the whole piece.
I mean, Long Island guy, you know, mom's a schizophrenic, dad's a failed musician, cocaine at 13, you know, smoke weed, love the ciggies, boozed at home.
This all checks out.
The average. Public school up into Holy Trinity. Catholic school, but really a public school uniforms, one of the lower tier Catholic schools. You know, our theater arts teachers would make out with kids in the hall. Like that type of school. Everybody's having fun.
Played it fast and loose over
What's
there.
funny about that is that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
No brothers or sisters?
No brothers or sisters.
What about cousins? Was there a big family
There's
around?
one just died choking on a sandwich. Other one's a heroin addict. I swear to God.
That's true.
I swear to God.
What kind of sandwich? Do you know?
We don't know.
It was a Godfather for sure.
Other one's a heroin addict. Other one, you know, it's all bad. I am a gay ex-cokehead comedian. I'm the most successful by far. Like, it's not even close. You know, Dad was going to be a musician. That didn't work.
What did he actually do, though? What did
He sang. He wrote songs and sang.
How were you paying the rent and the mortgage and stuff like that?
He was a wine salesman.
Okay.
That's probably
All right, so he did that. You know, he did that. And then my mother was a swim teacher. She taught swimming.
He wasn't really rolling in the dough.
Legacy, buddy.
Well, I feel like those lessons,
Yeah.
I feel like those lessons took place in an above
No,
ground pool
she
for sure.
collected Beanie Babies and Hess Trucks to even it out.
the keystone of trash.
Yeah,
You got a hash truck every year?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it had a helicopter. Yeah.
Those things are all right, man. As long as the batteries were good.
When you come from the type of human filth I do, your idea is that you will be saved by some kind of collectible.
Yes. The state quarters are big.
Most people put their effort or energy into like some type of functional business, but my mother and many people like her felt that like if you waited on a long enough line,
Yeah.
money was on the other end of it.
Sure.
Like if you just stuck it out in a line at Burger King to get the fucking commemorative Disney Little Mermaid toy set, you got 10 of them and wrapped them in plastic and put them under the bed.
Jeez.
One day,
That's
your
your-
ship was going to come in.
That's your
That's
401k right there.
Is that stuff still out there? Is that still somewhere?
During Hurricane Sandy, a lot of it floated down the street. Like you saw like Princess Diana bears and stuff just floating down the street. Hurricane Sandy finally, I think, was the nail in the coffin. Yeah.
Right.
But every now and then my uncle will go on eBay and sell one or two Beanie Babies so we could give my mother money at the mental institution. Is it too dark? I'm sorry, we've just started.
Hey, you get the
Should
golden
we
plan
even
this
call
month.
this Are You Garbage? Should we even put a question mark?
No.
Was McDonald's Monopoly a big deal?
Big McDonald's Monopoly was huge. My friend's parents collected Marlboro Miles.
Hey,
I mean,
as did my family.
Yeah, like they had coats, they had a tent,
Yeah.
they had
Sleeping bag.
Yeah, they had an entire outdoors,
Yeah.
a canteen, they had a Marlboro canteen. My friend Shay McGoulahan.
Italian kid?
Yeah. So just to give you an idea, it's yeah.
Yikes. And what was the house? Was it a single family home?
Single family home, 2 stories, not a bad house, got an in-ground pool
That's good.
because my mother taught swimming in it.
Okay.
Which was nice. She did it at the house. She did it at the house. She would also do it in the rec. She do it at the rec
Sure.
center. But she also you get the private money
Sure.
Yeah.
in the house.
The money's in the in-calls.
Yeah,
Doing
yeah.
side work. Hey, listen,
When
we
they
can do it at the rec center, or we can lower it a little bit. I pocket most of the cash. We just shot the pool. Come on over.
So that's where they were at. Not big savers of money.
Where do they come from? Were they
So
how back is the Irish?
Forever. So my grandfather came over to this country when he was 4 on a boat.
Okay.
He was really successful. He ended up being like a millionaire, multimillionaire, general contractor, worked his way up.
Dad's
from
dad?
being homeless.
Mom's dad?
Yeah, dad's dad.
Okay.
And my father inherited absolutely none of the ambition, drive.
Today's story is about a 3-year period where people were going missing at an alarming rate, and no one knew why. Eventually, it was discovered, and let me tell you, it is absolute nightmare fuel. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please offer to walk the Like Button's dog, but then just immediately go sell their dog in the parking lot of a big box store. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. Early on the morning of January 12, 1765, a 12-year-old boy named Jacques Courtesy sat up suddenly in his bed, breathing hard. The room was pitch black that he was in, but he could feel he was sweating and his heart was racing, and he tried to shake his head to kind of wipe the nightmare he had just had from his mind, but he just couldn't do it. All he could think about was how in this nightmare, something had been chasing him, and he had been running for his life, he was trying to get away, but whatever this thing was, this horrible beast that was following him, it just kept getting closer and closer and closer until it finally got him, and that's what woke him up. Jacques reached up and touched his face, and he realized he was crying, and he quickly wiped the tears away because he didn't want any of his brothers or sisters to see that he was crying. Jacques was the oldest of 8 kids in his family, and all of them slept in the same small room on straw-filled mattresses inside of their family's little cottage in the southern French province of Gévaudan. And so, Jacques was looking around the bedroom to make sure none of his siblings had woken up and seen him in the state. He believed that they were all still fast asleep. Everybody made fun of Jacques for being a scaredy cat, for being a coward. And to Jacques, this really hurt his feelings, because on some level, it was kind of true. In fact, just a couple of months earlier, he had lost in a physical fight with a much younger boy, and afterwards, Jacques had cried, and the whole town had seen this happen. And so afterward, all the kids began calling Jacques Wet Chicken, and even Jacques' brothers and sisters began joining in, calling him the Wet Chicken, really making him feel totally ashamed. And it wasn't like the adults in this village were stepping up to protect Jacques, because to them, Jacques was kind of like a liability. In this part of France, the winters were brutal. People died all the time in this village from the weather. And then the summers brought all these outbreaks of disease that wiped out even more people in this village. And so by and large, where Jacques lived was kind of like the survival of the fittest. And many kids didn't live that long unless they were really hardy and tough, like their parents who had managed to survive for that long. But Jacques was just not like that. He was very gentle and peaceful, yet somehow he could survive. And Jacques really was not trying to become this kind of macho guy. Instead, he really wanted to be a priest like his uncle. His uncle lived far away, so it was tough to see his uncle all that often to learn about how to become a priest. But anytime Jacques did get a chance to actually see his uncle, he would have a chance to read all the books and study alongside his uncle. And so for a little while, it's like Jacques was transported away from the hardships of his village to the life that in many ways he wished he had. A quiet, peaceful, very studious life. But deep down, Jacques felt like there was no chance he ever actually escaped this little village where he effectively was an outcast. Even though the sun had not risen yet, Jacques just sat on his bed and couldn't fall asleep again after waking up from this nightmare. And so just sitting there in the dark and the quiet, Jacques began to think about what he had to do later that day when the sun did come up. And like usual, Jacques started to feel afraid. And so Jacques eventually just laid down with his eyes open. He laid there until dawn when one of his younger brothers, named Jean, who was 8 years old, rolled over and pushed him and said, "Hey, Wet Chicken, it's time to get up. It's our day with the sheep. Let's go." Jacques scowled at his younger brother and shoved him back, but not that hard. Jacques never really shoved anybody that hard, no matter what they did to him. And then both boys hopped out of their bed, they wolfed down some bread and cheese, and then headed out the door. As soon as they were outside, Jacques noticed that the village was much quieter than it normally was. But then again, these days, villagers do not leave their homes unless they absolutely had to. And so, Jacques and Jean made their way away from their cottage down the dirt road to the pen where their family kept all of their sheep. And the boys opened up the gate and they used their staffs to corral the sheep out of the gate back onto the road. And as the sheep kind of bleated and bombed and bumped into each other, the boys worked hard to kind of organize them on the road. And then once the sheep understood which direction they were going, towards the forest, a very familiar walk for the sheep, they kind of fell into line and just began walking very casually, like they knew exactly where to go. And once the sheep had fallen into this kind of routine rhythm, Jacques and Jean fell in behind them and just walked quietly after them. And as the boys walked, they both constantly kept looking left and right, and ahead of the sheep and behind them, constantly scanning for danger, because they knew something was out here. For months now, children all across this province in France, Gévaudan, have been going missing. They go off into fields or pastures, like when they're moving their family's livestock around, and the kids would just vanish. And then sometimes, if they were found again, they'd be found totally mutilated, far from where they should have been. The attacks on these kids across Gévaudan had begun a year earlier on June 30th, 1764. On that day, a 14-year-old girl, who actually was the older sister of one of Jacques' friends, had disappeared and then been found again later that day, partially eaten in a field near her home after she had not come home with the family's cat. Now, of course, this is very tragic, but to this point, there had not been any other attacks, so there was no pattern. So the assumption was she must have been attacked by a wolf, which did happen, and often to children, because kids at this time in France were often in charge of tending to their families, raising animals, the way Jacques and Jean were going out with their sheep. You know, these kids were small, they couldn't really defend themselves, and if a wolf set onto them, there was very little they could do. But 5 weeks after this 14-year-old girl was found dead and mutilated in the field, 2 more teenagers